Good evening. You're very welcome to Centre Ground. This is our 15th live stream on the Irish Inquiry, where we chat to people from around the country looking at the various issues that affect them. And tonight, the spotlight is on the entertainment industry. But before we begin, I'd invite you to go to the Irish Inquiry website, where there's a drop-down box, Help Us. And there you can enter details of how you can help us from a technical point of view, or you can make a small donation that will help towards the housekeeping bills. We don't have any sponsorship or any paid advertising. All the work is done on a voluntary basis. And so to tonight. This week, the singer Van Morrison has issued proceedings, a judicial review of the decision of the Northern Ireland government to lock down and prevent himself and other entertainers from working. The COVID restrictions is having a massive impact on the entertainment industry, which employs an estimated 50,000 people. Not just the entertainers, but all of their supports, people that are involved in lighting and sound and so on. And so tonight we're going to examine the impact that lockdown is having on them. My guests are Mick O'Brien. Mick is a presenter on Dublin City FM, and he is a member of the well-known folk group, the Druids. Suzie Holohan is an actress, and many of you will recognise her from advertisements and a number of films that she has made. Aidan Killian is a comedian, and he's also the organiser of comedy festivals right around the world. And as always, in the second half of the programme, Dr. Peter Dunn chairs a panel discussion on the hot topic of the week. And tonight, we're going to be looking at the effects of school closures. And so, to begin, as I said, Mick O'Brien is a presenter on Dublin City FM, and he's also a member of the well-known folk band, the Druids. You're very welcome to Centre Ground, Mick.
Thanks, Anna. It's great to be here. Thanks very much for hosting the show and allowing me to be a guest. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Not at all. So, Mick, for people that are not into folk music and the trad scene, just tell us a little bit about the Druids.
Well, the Druids, we're an Irish folk band. We're a touring working band. Basically, what that means is that we work hard for a living. We earn our money on the road. We started out live back in 2008. So this is our 13th year on the road.
Right.
When I say we tour extensively. We can play up to 300 shows a year. We spend a lot of our time in the States, touring throughout UK and Scotland and Europe, and of course we tour in Ireland as well.
Okay, so maybe we'll just have a short video clip to give our viewers an idea of what you look like and what you sound like on stage.
Okay.
In the rain, and he kissed them as he put them on the train, and he sang them a song in times long gone. Oh, we knew that we'd be seeing them again. Far away, it's sad to say I must be on my way. Who buy me beer and whiskey 'cause I'm going far away. I said to think that we'll return it when I can. The greatest thing the loser is to stay back my land.
Wonderful, the Druids there on stage. Mick, when you're touring, how many of you are there between the band and the support people that are with you?
When we tour in the States, Anna, we operate as a kind of a solo unit, which just 4 members in the band. When we tour across the UK and Europe and Scotland and Ireland, we can have 6 on the road. So we have a road crew, and we also have an extra musician as well with us. So it's a fairly big outfit. 6 people are dependent on it, and that's just immediately. But there's also families and children and all that, as bills and mortgages and all that kind of stuff as well, that are dependent on what we earn from playing music.
Okay, so if we cast our mind back to last March when lockdown was announced, just tell me what your immediate reaction was to that announcement and perhaps how it has panned out for you since then.
Yeah, we went to the States on tour. We were due to have 5 tours in the States in 2020. Our first tour was in March 2020. The COVID kind of coronavirus had started to take off in Europe. It was bad in Italy, actually, as we were flying out from Dublin Airport to America. But the message that was coming from America, from Trump, was that, it was under control and so on. So we commenced our tour, starting in New York and making our way upstate New York, up to Buffalo, Detroit, Cleveland, and eventually we ended up in New Jersey. So we done our last show on the 14th of March in New Jersey. We had 20 other dates left to play in America. And the word came through that Trump was locking down the States. So basically we had to leg it and get out of there. Thanks to a particular airline, we were able to get home. We got home, and our kind of thinking was that this was going to last a couple of months. And to be honest, we were kind of glad of the break, because we had been on the road for many years at that stage and without a break.
Yes.
So we were kind of looking forward to a bit of a break, but we had no idea, absolutely no concept of how long this was going to last. And so here we are now, kind of 10, 11 months into it. And it's just horrific, to be honest.
Tell me about it.
Well, I suppose when you're a member of a band and you start out life playing music and traveling, even though we complain about traveling, like in America, we could do 14-hour drives, 15-hour drives from one gig to the next. We could do that 4 or 5 nights a week. In Ireland, we're constantly on the road. We could be in Donegal tonight. We could be in Wexford tomorrow night. We could be in Belfast the following night. And you complain about the traveling, but it's a lifestyle that you get used to. And it's a lifestyle that, even though you complain about it, that you actually like. We operate at nighttime. We live at nighttime. There's a comradeship that happens within the band, a fellowship that happens within the band, where, you're kind of like brothers in arms. You're traveling, you're creative, you're playing music. You're also keeping alive the culture of Ireland as well. And that's something that has been forgotten about in this pandemic. As a folk band, we play the music of the people. We keep alive our culture. We keep alive our history. We keep alive the events of the day. And we can't do that anymore. So there's a huge part of our soul that's gone.
Right.
We haven't performed since we came home from America, and each member of the band have had their own challenges with depression, with anxiety, and that's not even to speak about the financial troubles that come with that as well, and kind of adapting to a new lifestyle. It's been very, very tough.
Okay, and I suppose maybe not speaking specifically about your own band members, but I'm sure that you are in regular contact with other band members, because I know there's a great fraternity there among entertainers. You all know each other and you're all in regular contact with each other. Can you tell us or give us some idea of the financial impact that this lockdown is having on people?
Yeah, in our industry, in the live music industry, basically, I've encountered people. I done an interview on Radio 1 going back at the start of the pandemic, and from that I've had huge contact from people, musicians, just kind of talking about that their properties, their homes are in jeopardy because they're not able to pay their mortgages. They've car loans that are in jeopardy. They have loans on their equipment, on their instruments. So I've met people who have had to sell their instruments. Like if you talk about a musician selling their instruments, that's as bad as you can get, because it's like a plumber selling their tools, or like a carpenter selling their tools, or a taxi driver selling their taxi. If you don't have your instrument, you can't survive in this industry. I met one person who had saved, for 10 years to buy a particular instrument that they really wanted, an instrument that they would have for life, and they've had to sell that to pay for their mortgages. Like, the pain of that is unbelievable. I think, you know, the government, the state, have really been left wanting on this particular issue, particularly in relation to entertainers, actors, comedians, musicians. It's the response has been nil, to be honest, you know.
Well, I suppose people outside of the entertainment industry would say is that you have the PUP payment, and you know, there's various supports there. I know that recently the government announced a multi-million euro package of supports for people in the entertainment industry. Is that in actual fact the case?
Well, yes, a lot of musicians did get the PUP payment, but, like, you know, paying a mortgage on €350 a week, it's impossible to do it. I'd like to see some of the politicians try to do it, to be honest, and pay their bills and eat, and, you know, although
Yes.
of course it's welcome, but like it's far too little. The other side of it then, of course, as well, is that the stimulus package that was offered just before Christmas there I think it was in October, we applied for that in the band. We applied for that to record an album. We applied, we filled in the proper application form. We filled it in properly. And we got refused it. We got refused it on the basis that we didn't provide enough information. Now, I provided all the information that was required. I even gave them more than what was required. And I soon discovered that I'd say 9 out of 10 people who applied for that stimulus package got the same feedback, that they didn't provide enough information. What seems to have happened is that the select few got that payment, got a grant from that fund, but the vast majority of people who applied for it didn't. I've inquired about the selection process. I've inquired about how the selection was made, and what we've got back is nil, nothing. We've got no feedback whatsoever. So a working band like ourselves, who depend on music, who depend on that to earn a living, and by the way, we pay our taxes as well. You know, we were kind of left out of that loop completely, which makes me make the statement that it's far little too late. You know.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know that there was a list published in the paper of all of the people who were successful in their application, and what really surprised me is some of the big names that received very substantial amounts of money. And it occurred to me that these people would already have a significant income stream from record sales and so on, because we're looking here at some of the very big names in entertainment. And as you say, people like yourself, who are not big names, wouldn't be able to make a very significant amount of money from album sales and so on, have been, as it were, locked out of it. Yeah.
That's a fact, Anna. Like, I seen that list of names as well, and the anger that was in me was unbelievable, because household names who, you know, are in many ways they're multimillionaires. You know, they're the ones that got the stimulus package. You know, where people like us who work for a living and work hard for a living, we don't have, you know, 30 grand in the bank to fall back on. We don't have 100 grand in the bank to fall back on. We've nothing in our bank. Do you know what I mean? We live from tour to tour. We live off our live gigs, and in my view, it's bands like us that should have got the stimulus package. Do you know, to encourage us to record, and to generate that kind of income within the music industry. You know, again, I make the point that bands like us pay tax as well. Do you know what I mean? It's not just the big lads that pay tax. We pay it as well. Do you know? So.
Mm-hmm. Well, I suppose to bring our conversation to a close for the moment, what do you want to see happening is the first thing, and secondly, what do you expect will happen now as the year unfolds? So it's kind of two questions in one.
Let me take the last one first. So what do I expect will happen? Well, what I expect to happen from the state's point of view is nothing, to be honest. That's what I expect to happen. What I hope would happen is that they would kind of, for once, kind of see the value of the arts, see the value of the arts, and not just kind of see it in monetary terms, but the contribution that actors and comedians and musicians make to our culture. Like, the ironic part of this is that when the lockdown happened, we were the ones that were being called on. The musicians and the comedians and the actors were the ones that were being called on to entertain the nation through Facebook Live. Do it free of charge as well. And we find ourselves in a situation that when you do a Facebook Live, you're nearly begging people to make a donation. Like, that's not the culture that we come from. That's not the culture of the musician or the actor or the comedian. So what I would hope would happen is that there would be a sea change within the state to value culture, to value the contribution that artists make to our society. What was the first question you asked me? I've lost my train of thought there.
Well, my apologies. It was the way that I framed the question. I framed it as two questions in one. Yeah. And you have answered it. It's what you want to see happen, or what you would like to see happen. So
yeah, I would like to see that. I would like to see that value placed on. Like when I read that article about Van Morrison, it reminds me of the penal laws. You know, that music is banned. That instead of trying to ban things, we should be trying to look at a way that music can be part of our culture again, part of our society again, and that musicians get paid for doing it. You know, that it's a contribution, a serious contribution that we have to make, both in terms of entertainment, but also in terms of culture. And the state should be looking at the ways that can be made possible, rather than trying to ban music. Like we had that in the 1700s with the penal laws where music was banned. We don't need to go back to that again. You know, we need to be positive around this, and there needs to be a positive attitude around this.
Okay, thank you so much, Mick, for that. And we'll be coming back to you in a little while. Suzie Holohan is from Dublin, and she is an actress, and she is going to, you're very welcome, Suzie, to Centre Ground.
Thanks for having me.
Suzie, for people who are not familiar with your work, just tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm a jobbing actor, so I just go from job to job, basically. It says it is, but I do a lot of voiceover work, fringe theatre, short films, commercial work as well.
Okay, so maybe we have a little video clip here of you in action, and I would advise that there is strong language just at the very end of this video clip.
You know what? You're right. Who cares how it looks? Let's forget the candles. Let's forget the flowers. Forget the tuxes. Sure, let's forget my wedding dress. Let's get married in matching tracksuits.
Now that sounds like a plan.
Well, you've got to get the right space, Steve. I don't want to get married in some derelict warehouse.
Okay.
Thank you.
You know, we are all alone here.
Get in the fucking car, Steve.
You've got to explain.
Okay, Suzie, you in action. Where were you last March when lockdown was announced, and what was your initial response to it?
So I live in London, so I was in London doing a play in the London Irish Centre in Camden about Michael Collins, and I was playing his sister, Hanny Collins, and I actually had COVID at the time, but I didn't know because they weren't testing and lockdowns were announced. I was sick, so I kind of went into the pits of despair about the whole thing and just couldn't really get my head around it.
Right. And so at what stage then did you come back to Ireland?
I only came back. I came back here at Christmas. I just haven't gone back to London yet.
Right. So tell me, how is the restrictions impacting on your work?
Well, I can't do my job. Like I can't. You've got all the theatres are shut, which means all the theatre actors are out of work. There is production going on, but I mean it's scaled back. There's not as much of it going on because there's so many hoops that people have to jump through to do TV and film work, between like COVID tests or people having to self-isolate beforehand. So it just makes the whole thing way more expensive. So when you used to get booked on small little jobs, they're not there anymore.
Okay. And is lockdown having a financial impact on yourself?
Yeah, it's having a massive financial impact on me. I mean, I'm lucky. I do a bit of voiceover work, so I've been able to, earn a bit of money. But other than that, it's been, getting British government support in the form of universal credit.
And tell me a little bit about that. What supports are there in the UK?
So in the UK, you get universal credit. So you're on £93 a week. But on top of that, you can get a housing benefit. So they will pay towards your, well, I rent, so pay towards your rent. There's also a grant scheme that's based on your previous tax returns, where they'll give you a percentage of your your profits. But as most self-employed people know, we put so much through as expenses that our profits actually look a lot less than what they actually are.
Yes. So it's extremely difficult. And tell me, Susie, how do you see things going to pan out now for the rest of 2021?
Do you know what? I'm a bit hopeless about the whole situation. Like, you try and put, your best foot forward in these situations, but if theatres aren't reopening, acting is one of those professions where you've always got a large proportion of people out of work, and it's extremely competitive. So the whole thing is just even more competitive. So I just don't really have any hope for it at all this year.
And what would you like to see the government doing, the UK government doing?
Probably the same as what I'd like to see the Irish government, and just, I don't know, reopen these things. Like, I see, I'm looking at a lot of this and I just don't believe what I'm seeing before my eyes. Yes, we do have COVID. Yes, it is, a virus. And yes, it can be fatal to a small percentage of people. But the rest of us need to be able to earn a living.
Well, quite a number of people would argue that opening up theatres, cinemas and entertainment will lead to the spread of COVID in the community. And for that reason, then, these places must be kept closed. What would you say to those people?
Well, those people don't have to go to theatres or don't go to the cinema or don't leave your house. But, there's a percentage of us who want to leave our house and want to be able to go to these things. And I don't know, I think it's a bit unfair that, we're being penalised because so many people have been unnecessarily terrified. Okay.
And I suppose a final question to you, Susie. You're, I suppose, to use, a term young people will use, you hang out with people in the world of theatre and film and so on, and you would know quite a number. How is the restrictions impacting on them?
It's like what, well, a lot of them are just depressed and anxious and upset and angry that they can't do the jobs that they love. Artists work so hard for what they do, and at the best of times we're not given the recognition that we deserve, and it's like we've just been hung out to dry in this situation.
Okay, well, Susie, thank you so much. You're joining us tonight from Dublin, and we will be coming back to you in a little while when we're discussing the hot topic of the week. My next guest is comedian Aidan Killian, and Aidan is actually coming to us from Amsterdam. The wonders of modern technology and the wonder of Stephen Kerr and the Irish Inquiry. You're very welcome to Centre Ground, Aidan. I think Aidan probably has his microphone muted, so Aidan,
sorry, I was distracted by your beautiful voice, Anna. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for all the hard work you're doing.
Oh dear, flattery will get to every place. So Aidan, for people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself.
There can hardly be many of them at this stage.
Well, that's true. That is true, yes.
I'm just a normal fella from Dublin, and I did business studies in Dublin City University, and I got a job in a bank, an investment bank, Bear Stearns, and they sent me to Tokyo in Japan, where I was an investment banker, and they paid me far too much money. And then I saw stand-up comedy for the first time in my life, and I said, I'd love to try that. And I got up there and did 3 minutes, and I was terrified. But as soon as I got up, I fell in love with the live experience, an audience, a room full of people laughing. And shortly afterwards, I quit the job and I traveled the world, came back to Ireland and got paid nothing at the start. But after 3 or 4 years, I built it up to a living wage, and I've been traveling around the world at different festivals ever since. And in the last few years, I've been in Asia, involved in Magner's International Comedy Festival, and we're in 10 countries. I own nearly half of that now. I've got business partners, and we've built up this beautiful comedy festival in Asia. But I'm back in Ireland. I'm back officially. I'm meant to be back in Ireland. Maybe I'm skipping to the next question. That's who I am, Anna. That's enough about me.
Yes. And I suppose for our viewers now, we have a short video clip of you in action. Now, I have to say, Aidan, that it took me hours and hours to find 1 minute of a video clip where you're not cursing, swearing, or talking about sex. But I did eventually find this 1 minute clip. You
just wanted to spend hours looking at videos of me, Anna. Tell the truth to the audience now.
Well, that's true too.
The show's about money, and I'm meant to know about money because I used to be an investment banker and I had all the stuff that they had. I had houses and properties, and then the banks came after me, and I was a comedian. I couldn't pay them back, and I explained to them, look, I'm a comedian. My currency is laughter. How many jokes do you want? They sent me a legal letter. At the top it said, without prejudice. I didn't know what that meant. I looked it up. It means cannot be used in a court of law. What are they trying to hide, sneaky scumbags? So I wrote back my own letter at the top, big black bold letters, with prejudice. This matter is now settled. And I enclosed my very first comedy DVD. And at the bottom I wrote my own legal language, no swapsies backsies. But those of you who know me know that I genuinely believe in debt forgiveness, and I don't just say it, I back it up with my actions. I borrowed money from a bank, I didn't pay them back. And I forgave myself.
Right, and you know, that clip is actually quite topical for our times, people having difficulties repaying loans and repaying banks. If we could be serious just for a moment, Aidan, you were just about to tell me a little bit about the business that you have built up. So just tell us a little bit more about it.
As a comedian, I was involved in Magner's International Comedy Festival, and I met this man, Matt, and he wanted a partner, and I wanted a partner. I loved the business. And just to let you know, I was on a world tour passing through, and I was in Bangkok, and I met a French woman, and we then became an item, and we spent time together. And this magnificent woman, and she wanted me to stay there longer, so I did, but I needed an income, and I couldn't perform as a performer enough in Asia. So I was happy to get involved in the business, and we built it up over I think I was on the 4th year. And at this stage, it wasn't just the Magner's International Comedy Festival, but I'd also owned a comedy club in Singapore, a full-time performance venue, not just for comedians, but for storytellers and spoken word artists and poets and singers. And it was the only full-time performance venue in the whole country. So we whatever the word is, amalgamated. We combined the two companies and turned it into one, and it was going really well. Anna, I was about to be loaded. I was going to come home like a king back to Ireland. They're going to throw confetti at me in my limousine.
Amalgamated. That's
Thank you.
The word
there you go, better woman.
Yes, yes. So that was where you were at in March 2020 when lockdown was announced.
I'd moved back to Ireland, and I'd set a smaller little tour with comedians that you'd recognise, like our good friend Ardal O'Hanlon. He was doing some of the shows, and they were all sold out, of course. And I had a fella from England called Reginald D. Hunter, another lovely fella, all sold out. So I had these monthly tours in Ireland that I was going to bring over the best acts that I could get, because I've got some pretty good contacts I've built up over the years. A lot of them are my friends. Steve Hughes was going to come out, the Australian comic. He's amazing as well. And anyway, so we had them in like hotels and bars in Ireland, and they were sold out in March. And April would have been my Asia tour for the festival that I mentioned, but that would have been April. So March and April were booked up, and I'm not sure what I'd planned in May, but I was sold out completely for March and April when it all happened. I know that much for sure. Probably had. Oh yeah, I had gigs. I had gigs in Venice. I had gigs in Bucharest. I had gigs in all over the place.
Right. So then lockdown was announced, and what was your initial reaction?
Well, I was still working because I had to return tickets. I had to cancel shows. I had to ring the owners of the hotels and discuss it with the bar owners. What are we going to do, depending on what country we were in, because there was different rules in different countries. I had to send all the tickets back for the Ardle show and the Red show. So I'd get emails every day. Can we get our money back? And of course, I'd send them their money back. And then some would want a voucher for when we do the show in the future. So I was still working, but not doing the type of work I wanted to do. I was doing admin work for a while. And then when I realized this is going on a bit longer, there was a moment where it hit me. I've got nothing. There's no work. There's no income. And my rent still needed to be paid. I still had to pay the rent. And my beautiful girlfriend helped me with that, which is very demasculating. I got that word by myself this time, Anna. It wasn't very pleasant for me, because I'd gone from being very rich in my head, you know, having this monthly income and this security enough to be able to create to have a family, to feel strong in myself, to having nothing. And I couldn't even get the free government money because I wasn't back in the country long enough. So I could have gone on the dole, but I didn't really know. I wasn't comfortable because I didn't know how long it would last. And this is for a few weeks. And is my business going to be there in a month? So I didn't do that. So I had nothing for a while. But then I decided this isn't going to end any day soon. So there was a beautiful storytelling course that I've always wanted to do, but never had time in Amsterdam, the Mesrab School of Storytelling. They're world class, and my girlfriend at the time encouraged me to go. I'm not sure if she was trying to get rid of me or is she was trying to lift up my spirits, but I think the latter, to be fair. And I was a broken man, to be honest with you. I was over drinking. I didn't deal with it well. It's not like I just realized I'm broke now, rebuild and get on with it, because it was slowly each week another little dig, another little hit. So I was kind of just overeating, over drinking, over watching. I was trying to watch all of Netflix while being drunk. That was my aim, but I didn't. So I wasn't much fun to be around, I suppose.
So, okay, what's your situation at the moment, and where do you think you're heading?
My situation is this Friday I graduate from storytelling, my storytelling course, and then I'm going to spend one more month building a show about Irish mythology, actually. Cuchullin's dad, Lou, and it's all about the sovereignty of the human being and making the decisions inside yourself, you know, for your own interest and for the interest of those around you. So I'll tell you where I'm heading. I've lost all faith and all trust in the Irish government and many of the governments, to be fair. And I don't think that they have the interest of mankind in their hearts. And I don't know, I hope that's not true, what I just said, but I don't know if their actions is going to help the arts industry. I don't know if it's going to help the people of Ireland. So I'm just going to do my own thing with or without them. And my own thing is I'm going to do my storytelling show, my one-man show. It'll be comedy and storytelling amalgamated into one. And I'm coming home in March in time for my grandmother's birthday, and I'm going to do that show all around Ireland with or without lockdown. I'm going to drive 20 different bookings from venues that have been closed down, barbers, people's homes, people's sitting rooms, and we're going to do it. Some of them are outdoors, and I'm going to do the show where people want me. I'm not going to force myself on anyone who doesn't want me, Anna. I'm going to go to someone's home who's invited me and their family and their friends because they believe that it's important to gather. They believe it's important for art to still happen. They believe it's important for human beings in the country to connect. and I believe that too. So I'm going to support it, and I'm going to, that'll be my action, and that's what I'd like to see many artists do. We just do our own thing. Let's stop relying on them to support us or to give us anything, which we already own. So that's what I'm doing, Anna, and they can arrest me if they like. If they arrest me, I'll do the gig in the police station. They can be my audience.
Right. Okay. Just as you're chatting to me there, the thought that's going through my head is that the present mirrors the past, and it reminds me, of hundreds and hundreds of years ago, where you had traveling entertainers going from one place to another. For example, I come from County Meath, which was the birthplace of the blind harpist O'Carlin, who would have travelled around the country playing his music and composing tunes, and I suppose people then giving him payment in return. And that's what you're about to do, and the venture that you're about to embark on sounds pretty much like what happened hundreds of years ago.
The travelling bards, yeah, that's right, the bards.
Mm-hmm.
And the bardesses. But if I'll go to anyone's home in the country, I will take responsibility for getting there. I'll pick up my hat at the end of it, and you can throw in a few shillings if you have them, and put me up in your house and give me food, and I will do the show. That's my promise.
Well, Aidan, I'll tell you now, if you come to my house, I might never let you go.
Maybe I'll never want to go.
Oh dear. Oh, I suppose people tonight are seeing a side of me that they wouldn't normally see. I'm normally very, very serious, and I'm always dishing out bad news, so there is a fun side to me as well. So, so thank you so much for that, Aidan, and we'll be chatting to you now in a moment or two. So Peter, as always, waiting patiently and quietly in the wings. Good evening, Peter.
Anna, a very good evening to you, and once again, thanks very much. And as we always say, but the person who makes all of this possible, Stephen. So a big thank you to Stephen.
Yes.
And definitely. As I want to do, I listen intently to what all of the guests say, and again, some really fabulous contributions there, and really what's coming through in a very authentic way is the truth of all of this shambles, what I'll describe as a shambles, literally, that we find ourselves in, and there are very, very few other words perhaps that we could use to describe it. A few things that I noticed just before getting to to this week's hot topic question, having listened to Mick, Suzie, and Aidan, a few things stood out, I suppose. Mick talked about, and again, it's something we don't see with the entertainment sector. It's the people that really, I suppose, go work behind the scenes, really. And I'm just getting something here now. Yeah. Okay, apologies about that. We don't see the people behind the scenes, and we don't appreciate that. So, when we talk about all of those employment opportunities and prospects, we forget that really there's a whole team behind all of those people. Interesting that Mick likens the response to the penal laws, and I suppose what we might call the musical Taliban. Also, Susie really touched on something, which was when she said the unnecessary terrifying of the population, and I think with from the mainstream media that has come through very, very strongly, what we might call the fear agenda. And also what Aidan, I think, has highlighted is something that I think, having watched last night's healthy debate, something that one of the guests on there brought up, and it's the notion of a more dissipative and a smaller economy. So all of those points were really, really interesting. But again, our guests have really engaged us with some really authentic points and a really rich vein of discussion. So this week's hot topic relates to COVID, as we've done really for most of the last year. And it relates to the issue of the ongoing school closures. And very simply then, this week's hot topic question is, should we see the opening of schools in the very near future?
Okay. Mick, I'll put that question to you first. Do you have any views on the closure of the schools?
I do, indeed. I think education is a right for people. I think the most famous quote that comes to mind when I think about education is the one that Nelson Mandela spoke. He said that education is the greatest weapon that people can have to fight injustice, and it's a powerful statement. In terms of what's happening at the moment in Ireland, in terms of education, school closures and so on, I think there's a valid argument for both sides. Where it gets confusing for me is that I would hate to think that decisions around education were being made purely on economic terms, that basically the agenda in terms of decision making was based on should we reopen schools which will allow parents to go back to work? If we allow parents to go back to work, it'll feed the economy. Really what we're talking about is that we're putting money ahead of people, putting money ahead of people's safety. If we look at Children First guidelines that came from 1998, it talks about the principle of paramountcy, which is the safety and welfare of children. And that's the other side of the argument. Should we go for the safety and welfare of children, or should we go in favour of the economy? Well, for me, every day of the week, it's about the safety and welfare of children, and that's where it should be. I think we should put that first. And to be honest with you, the economy should come second place all the time in terms of safety and welfare. That's my view on it.
Okay, and moving on to you, Susie. Do you have any particular views on the closure of the schools?
Yeah, I think they should reopen them. Like, I'm looking at teachers complaining about the risk that they're being put at, but isn't everybody at risk from this? Like, you don't get the supermarket workers going on strike because of the risk they're put on every day because of this. And if you look to somewhere like Sweden, where they kept the schools open the whole time, there was no children that died from COVID. And in terms of just, not necessarily from an educational point, or that argument between the economy and education, but if you look at statistics, in the first lockdown in the UK, Great Ormond Street saw something like a 1,493% increase in children presenting in hospital with head traumas. So many children are vulnerable at home, and these things aren't being picked up on because they're not in school.
Yes, that's a very interesting point, because Dr. Carol Coulter and the Family Law Reporting Project, the Childcare Law Reporting Project published her report yesterday, which looked at proceedings in the family law courts in the second half of 2020. And that was one of the points that she made. There were cases that came before judges of children that were being very seriously neglected at home. In one particular case, a mother who was no longer able to access AA meetings fell into drinking, and her daughter, who was living with her, then was, I suppose, being really willfully neglected. And the point was made that that child, had she been going to school, the teachers would have been able to pick up on it far sooner. So yes, that is a very, very good point, that schools is the place where teachers can pick up on children that are being neglected, and it can be dealt with much, much quicker. So children are definitely in danger. And of course, there has been a huge surge in domestic violence. The Gardaí are reporting a 25% increase in the number of reports of domestic violence that are being made to them. And of course, in many of these cases, children are witnessing this, so they're being deeply affected and traumatized by it. Thanks for that, Susie. So, Aidan, do you have any particular views on the closure of schools?
Well, they have been open and they didn't all die. So it's already been tried and tested. It's already been proven to be safe. We know that kids can't die from COVID. They have more chance of dying from lightning. If they're going to wear masks, they may as well wear rubber masks. I mean, it's a mad question. The reality is it's already proven that 30 people can be together and they don't all die of COVID. So therefore, since we know that, why aren't we opening the bars and the restaurants and the nightclubs and the galleries and the everywhere we work, the theaters for Susie? Yeah, I think it's obvious it should be open, but maybe I'm biased because as a COVID survivor, Anna, as someone who had
Yes.
COVID, as an expert on COVID since I've had it, I think it's of course it's very terrifying. It is terrifying for people. Of course, death is terrifying, suffering and pain is. I had the flu for 2 days and luckily for me I was okay. But I seem to be the majority. Most people who get it don't get it too bad. They have it for a week maybe, and it's not the end of the world. So I would say everything should be open, and we just need to face it, deal with our fears, look after ourselves, take our vitamin D, look after our health, be nice to each other, and people who are vulnerable, do our best to keep them safe.
Okay, and so back to you, Peter. I'm sure you have some more probing questions for us on the topic.
Oh, absolutely, Anna. I mean, I think one thing that strikes me, I'm loath to say this, and it kind of departs a little bit from, I think, the sentiment that all of our guests have expressed, but in relation to politicians. And I mean, we can speculate as to the performance of politicians in all of this. We can speculate as to the origins and the progression and the evolution, not just of the virus, but the response to the virus. So we can speculate a lot, and we can speculate that perhaps some politicians are using it opportunistically. In relation to the Minister for Education, Nora Foley, however, I really have to sort of say, and again, I'm loath to say it, it really doesn't chime with the sentiment expressed by our guests, but I feel quite sorry for her at a human level, in terms of where she finds herself. That being said, while we can, I think, legitimately say that, I think the narrative is starting to wear thin. So just if I can come back to maybe a drum that I've been beating for the last probably 6 months, when people talk about deadly in terms of the virus, and we go back to the IFR values published in the paper by John Unitas from Stanford University, which was then adopted by and ratified, I suppose is the word, by the WHO, where in under 70s, the infection fatality rate is 0.05%, or 5 in every 10,000 people who develop, symptoms will succumb. So in over 70s, that's about 0.31%. Overall, it's about 0.3%. So, as I think the former pathologist, Dr. John Lee, said in the UK, it's within the envelope or within the variability of a seasonal flu. So it isn't, in epidemiological terms, I mean, to use the word deadly is probably a loaded term. While it will be deadly for, typically for very, very elderly people, with accompanying comorbidities. I think the average was something like 2.6 comorbidities. But I think in terms of what happened in nursing homes really got hit very, very badly, right across all developed nations. And the issue there, I think, there is the harms of lockdown, including what we're seeing with schools and including what we're seeing with particularly educational disadvantage and special educational needs. That these people are one more group who, for politicians, and it seems that there's a lot of political expediency, that these groups are simply one more item of collateral damage. So I think we're not in a good place currently as a society. And again, to go back to the contributions of our guests, the authenticity has shone through in terms of some of the real difficulties. financial, psychological, emotional, all of those issues that people are facing. So one other thing, if I can just maybe chime in with it, it's something that Mick referred to, and it's something that I've actually chatted about with colleagues in the last couple of days. And I just wonder, we're in the social media era, and it has its advantages, but it also has its drawbacks. And I just wonder and it does depart from our hot topic, but I just wonder, is the rise of social media is one of the harms that it's done, that it's gotten people accustomed to, and at the risk of being glib, free stuff. So the notion that even, for example, artists and performers, can come on and just do something for 30 minutes or an hour or however long, and it's free. And I just wonder what our guests feel about that, particularly in terms of their own sector.
Okay, Mick, if we could put that question to you first, do you think that the downside of social media is that people expect everything for free?
I think the platform has been created and the expectation has been created that artists will give of their services free. Now, our experience in the Druids, I have to say, is that when we went live and so on, people do make a contribution to us. But my problem with this is that the expectation that comes with that, the expectation that people should make a contribution to us, you kind of find yourself in a position where you're nearly begging for something. You're providing something and you're begging for it. I don't like being in that situation. I really don't. But having said that, obviously we appreciate that when that happens. The free kind of music, the free kind of entertainment and so on. I don't necessarily have a problem with that. What I do have a problem with is Spotify. I have a serious problem with that, where, we have an album on Spotify at the moment, a live album on Spotify, and people download that or people listen to it. We get absolutely nothing for it. We get paid nothing for it at all. We provide the music. We paid for the recording of the album, and we get nothing for it. I think I heard one of the most famous rock bands in Ireland saying that that one of their songs was listened to over 1 million times, and they got paid 15 euros for it, which is horrific. Like, if you think about it. So Spotify are raking in money, and very little trickling down to the people who created that art in the first place. That's what I have a problem with.
Okay, and that's a very, very interesting point. Of course, Spotify have done a multi-million-dollar deal with Prince Harry and his wife Meghan for regular podcasts. So maybe if you had some royal blood in you, you might be doing better with Spotify.
I don't have any royal blood in me, Anna. You're all right.
Okay. So moving on then, Susie, do you feel that the era of social media has created an expectation in people to get too much for free from artists?
Yeah, but there's always been that element from when I started off acting about 10 years ago that people expected you to do work for free, and they turn around and say, oh, it's great exposure. And you're like, yeah, that doesn't pay my rent. And I'd be very careful now as to what I'd do for free. I mean, I would always help if a mate doing something, I've written my own content and short films, and my friends have come in and, I haven't been able to pay them other than their travel or fed them and things like that. So yeah, there are things you will do for free. But if it's someone I don't know who's approaching me to do something for free, I've been in this business for long enough now. No, I won't do it for free. But it usually is the actors that are shafted in production. Like a friend of mine the other day applied for a job. She was told it was going to be a certain amount. Then they wrote back to her and said, oh, sorry, we actually don't have the budget now to pay you. Hope that's okay. I was like, no, it's not okay. Like, pay actors.
Yes. Okay. And Aidan, I'm sure you have a viewpoint on this issue.
Well, for me, comedy on Zoom, it's hard to make as good as it would be to a live audience. Mm-hmm. And it's not really about money. Of course it is. You want to pay the rent and you have to eat. But ultimately it's a labor of love. I mean, I quit banking, and many people quit a career or didn't do a career because they wanted to have this labor of love, which is connecting with an audience and meeting people and being really alive and present and sharing that space in between the music, in between the words. And that's what we love as a performer and an audience member, that moment where we're moved. And I, for one, don't get that from online events. So with regards to getting paid, I don't do them. Now, some of my friends do. I'm not speaking on behalf of everyone in the community. Some of my friends will happily do it, because it's better to do something than nothing, and it keeps them sharp for when they are back on stage, and they can get some money some of the times. That's some of the things they've said. But I don't do it unless I'm speaking about a topic that I particularly enjoy. Like if I was talking about, like you, Anna, I'd do anything for you. But if the average person asked me, I wouldn't be interested, you know. But if it was,
I'm going to hold you to that. I'm
Good.
going to hold you to that. You know what they say, a promise made is a debt unpaid.
Fair enough. It's not a debt to you. I'll happily do it. A debt of pleasure.
Okay, and that is actually a lovely note on which to end our live stream for tonight. I suppose a final point that I'd like to make on the original question about school closures is I'm, as most of you will know, a retired teacher, and my huge concern about this lockdown is that it's having a disproportionate effect on children with special needs and with children from poorer backgrounds. And there was actually a very good article in yesterday's Irish Times which examined the growing divide between the rich and poor, as it were, in education, that students in the private schools are now getting the very best digital education that money can buy, and they are actually, progressing and they're excelling. And then children from poorer backgrounds, and indeed children in parts of rural Ireland where there's no access to broadband, are locked out of the education system. Children with special needs are regressing, and I was listening to a father of two autistic boys this evening. One of the children is 4, the other is 6, and since they're out of school, they have really, really regressed, and all of the work that had been done to progress them has all been undone. So that is my really, really big concern about lockdown and the closure of the schools. The president of the INTO was interviewed this evening on radio, and I thought he made a very, very interesting point in relation to the schools not opening tomorrow for children with special needs. He said that since Christmas, that every time you switch on the radio or turn on the television, we're being told about this dangerous variant of COVID that's in the community. We're being warned to stay at home, not to travel outside of the 5-kilometre distance, and only leave home for essential purposes. And the government is expecting people to adhere to those regulations and to that advice. And then, on the other hand, then they turn around and they expect children and teachers to return to the classroom, and they're being told that that they will be safe. So there's a kind of what would you call it? There's a contradiction there in terms. So that really is it for this week. I want to thank most sincerely my guest, Mick O'Brien from the Druids, Suzie Holohan, who is an actress coming to us from Dublin tonight, and comedian Aidan Killian. And as you know, that their livelihood has been stripped from them in the last 10 or 11 months. I suppose very quickly, very, very quickly, if I could go back to each of you, if people want to make contact with you or they want to buy any of your albums or any of your material online, how can they do so? So, Mick, could you please tell us briefly? Mick, your phone or your microphone is muted. Just unmute there, Mick.
There we go. Sorry about that.
Not at all.
Best way to contact us is through our website, www.thedruids.ie, thedruids.ie, and we have albums for sale on there, plus our email is on that as well. If you want to make contact, we'd love to hear from people. And thanks very much, Anna, for having me tonight. I really appreciate it. Not
at all, Mick. It was a pleasure having you. Susie, do you have a website, or is there any of your material for sale?
Not necessarily for sale, but if you want to give me a follow on Instagram, it's Sanhou, Sanhou. Myself and Aidan also do a show together called Do You Know What You Should Do? All one word. It's on Instagram, it's on YouTube, it's on Facebook.
Okay. And Aidan, if anybody wants to get
just
contact,
find me on Facebook. My name's there, Aidan Killian. Say hello. There's loads of videos on YouTube to entertain yourselves. But do reach out. Say hello. Let's be friends. Invite me to your house. I'll do a gig in your house and stay and eat your food.
Okay, perfect. And Peter, I don't think you have anything. I don't think you have a website or you have anything for sale. Is Peter there? I think Peter.
He's giving us the silent treatment.
He's giving us. Well, I think Stephen might actually have muted his microphone.
Right.
So
yes, unfortunately, not currently, Anna. But maybe watch this space.
Watch this space
with a face like mine. I'll end up on radio, maybe.
Okay. Well, listen. Thank you so much to all of you, and to you who have been watching us from home. I want to thank you most sincerely. I hope you enjoyed the programme. Definitely a lot of food for thought there. And you can help us by sharing this video. And as I said at the top of the programme, if you go to the Irish Inquiry website, there's a drop-down box, help us, and you can offer your technical skills, or if you want to make a donation, that will be most welcome. Of course, I am retired and I have an income, so I can do everything for free, and I'm very happy to do so. But the people in the Irish Inquiry don't have an income stream, and yet they are providing this platform to me for free, and I really, really do appreciate that. So until next week at 9 o'clock, I hope you have a wonderful week. Tune in tomorrow night at 9 o'clock for Finbar Markey Double Down. Banach de Orif Galer.